Welcome to Glass Doctor University. This is Tommy Patterson. Today I want to go over with you how to measure and replace an insulated glass unit in our biggest business, which is keep the frame, replace the glass. So we replace an awful lot of IGU units. Insulated glass units is what that stands for. Some people refer to them as thermopanes, a double pane, a triple pane. Anytime you have one or two or more pieces of glass with an airspace between them, you have an insulated unit. Okay, and what happens more times than not is mismeasures, because guys don't want to take the time to get a really good accurate measurement. So you have a couple choices when you're measuring a window. When you approach the window from outside, this is the view you see from outside your customer's residence. So you have a couple options. You have an IG meter that we have, an electronic meter that goes on the glass and will tell you how thick the unit is and what each pane of glass, how heavy they are, and if one has a low E coating. But to be honest, we can get that pretty simply and a lot less expensive than a really expensive meter. You know, a meter is nice to have, but not everyone can afford to buy a $1,200, $1,300 meter. So I go the old school route. You get a pair of calipers like this. You get them at C.R. Lawrence. They run about 20 bucks, somewhere in there. And if you look really close, you'll see that they have tape measure increments at the bottom. And they're in decimals by half-inch mark notations. Half-inch, 1 inch, inch and a half, 2 inches. So these, as long as you can get around the sash, you can use these to get your overall glass thickness of that unit. So the first thing you do when you walk up to the window is, one, you want to open it up, lift the window up, tilt it in, whatever you need to do, so that you can get your calipers around the window. So you just take your calipers like this, you go over that window frame, and you bring them to the glass on both sides, and then you read it. And you say, oh my, I got a 1 inch overall unit is 1 inch. So this unit, I know the overall thickness of this unit is 1 inch. Okay, wonderful. We got that out of the way. I can tell by looking it's low E. Okay, don't know which low E yet, but I know it's low E. So we got that out of the way. Now comes the most difficult and most common error that people make, is measuring the nominal size. And remember that we always measure width first, then height. Always width first, then height. And you'll notice this is the bottom sash of the window that I have in another video. Well, the bottom sash has no grids in it, no muntins. The top sash does. So when you're measuring this, width and height are critically important if it has any kind of grids or muntin bars in the window. You know, you say 1V, 2H, which means one vertical bar, 2 horizontal bars, and you give them height first, and your bars are flip-flopped opposite directions. So make sure you always give width first, then height. I want to show you a couple methods for measuring. One and most common, if you look really close, you can see the glazing beads that hold the glass into this sash. The glazing beads are pretty heavy. They look like they're about 1 inch wide. So I get my tape measure and I just want to check, and I say, oh, yeah, they're 7/8. So this is a 7/8 wide glazing bead. So how big is my insulated glass unit? Well, there's one thing you can do that'll give you a pretty good idea. We call it splitting the stop. So if I was going to measure this window and I didn't want to take the literal minute that it takes to take the beads off and actually get an accurate measurement, we can call splitting the stop, which means taking the front edge of your tape and putting it against that stop and measuring to the back of this stop. Oh, that's 15 inches wide. What I mean by splitting the stop is because now if we make the window that big from this point here to the inside of this point, our glass, when we come to put it in, will split both stops like that. So we call it splitting the stop. Now I know that if I split the stop, I can always make that piece of glass work. It might be small, it might be too smaller compared to the correct one, but I know I can make it work as a glazer. So you can always split the stop, knowing I can make that window work. As long as you give me half of each stop, I know I can make it work. I might have to add some blocks around it, but I can make it work. So splitting the stop like that. Same thing on this side, split the stop on the height. So we say if we were splitting this one, it would be 11 3/8. So we have 15 by 11 3/8. 15 by 11 3/8. How about that? our size we measured by splitting the stop was 15 inches by 11 3/8 by 1 inch overall thickness, right? That's what we measured. So now I'm going to take the literal minute that it takes and remove 2 glazing beads or 4 glazing beads to get an accurate measurement on this glass and see how much it varies, if it varies at all. So when you're removing glazing beads, a couple different tools you can use for removing glazing beads. This is my lineup that I like to carry with me at all times. This is just simply a curved scraper. And the reason I like this is because, well, I'll show you in a minute, but most glazing beads, you need to bring them away from the frame towards the center of the glass and lift them up at the same time. So this is a great tool for getting underneath that molding and lifting the back side of it up while I use my 5-in-1 to open that back up. So these are my 2 tools of choice for removing these glazing beads. You can still use a stiff bladed putty knife, stiff blade, so it doesn't give a lot, so you can get in there, because you got to get in between the glazing bead and the sash frame. It's a really tight fit. Believe it or not, it's a pretty tight fit. And then last but not least, some guys will carry a wide range, different widths of scraper blades to use for this. So, like I said, these are my 2 tools of choice for removing glazing beads. So I'm going to remove some glazing beads and show you just what's involved. So what I said before, I use my 5-in-1 because this particular window, this sash has a black vinyl piece attached to my glazing bead. So I just want to use my 5-in-1 to lift that away from the glass so I can get my other tool underneath that vinyl. You see that vinyl? Then I'm going to slide it to the corner, right? Now my blade is way under to the back side of that glazing bead. Now I'm going to take my 5-in-1 tool and come into the back side of this, right at that split, and I'm just going to pry towards the window and up the same time, and that glazing bead comes right off. So now I'm going to do the same thing on this one in this corner. So I'm going to take my curve tool and my 5-in-1. I'm going to use my 5-in-1 to get underneath that black vinyl and lift it up so I can get my curved scraper underneath. And I did this on purpose so that you can see what I'm talking about. So if you look now, my curved scraper blade goes all the way to the back side of that glazing bead. So that now when I pull down on this, it's prying up way back here at the edge of the sash, which is where it's locked. So when you get there, then I want to take my 5-in-1 and go right in that groove right there and release that glazing bead. So now I'm going to go in this side with my 5-in-1, right in that groove, and open that up, and I'm going to pry both ways at the same time. And you notice how easy that glazing bead now comes off. So we're going to repeat that process all the way around the window. 5-in-1, lift it up, get it underneath, get it to the corner. 5-in-1 tool right in the corner. Bend that, pry that. The glazing beads come off that easy. So, I mean, in reality, you're watching as I'm doing this live, so you know that it really doesn't take but a minute to remove all 4 glazing beads, so there's no reason to come back to the shop with some excuse that you couldn't get an extremely accurate measurement on your glass. Because in 40 seconds, there's my unit, there's my insulated unit. So now I take my tape measure and I measure my glass size exactly. Well, we went width first. We're really curious to see how we did, right, by splitting the stop. 15 1/8. So it's only 1/8 of an inch by splitting the stop off, which is actually pretty good. So this was 15 by 12 3/8, splitting the stop. Not splitting the stop, we have 15 1/8. 15 1/8 by 12 3/4. So we missed on the height by 3/8 of an inch, and we missed on the width by 1/8. So splitting the stop works. So it's a standby true method. It's been around since the beginning of the glass business. Split the stop. You could do it on replacement windows. You could split the stop on commercial entry doors, patio doors. You could split the stop on anything that has a glazing bead or a stop. You can split that stop knowing that when your glass goes in, it's going to go to the middle of each stop, and you can make that work. So that's how you get this down to the IG unit. Now we're going to do a replacement. Since we have it here now, we might as well go through how do you remove this IG and replace it? So you notice the glazing beads are off. There's nothing holding it, but wait, it won't come out of the frame. Well, that's because they have this window, and there's an adhesive between the window on this side back here and the sash frame. So right between here, there is an adhesive. Now we have a couple choices for cutting that adhesive. You could use a flat-bladed putty knife, get in there like that, and work it around. You could use Rockwell Sonic Crafter, an oscillating power tool with a mushroom blade to get in and go around. I'm not a big power tool fan on things like this, residential, only because it tends to be tighter than you think, and power really starts melting the vinyl. Vinyl has a really low melting point, and you'll melt the vinyl real easy. So I like C.R. Lawrence, call it a pizza wheel. I want to say $18, $20, but you notice it has a hand guard to protect your hand, so when you're in the glass, if it breaks or it's already broken, you won't get cut. And the pizza wheel just designed to go right underneath and between your sash and your glass. So when you get it there, the really simple thing is you just push forward and you'll feel it bottom out, and then you just like you're cutting a pizza. Bring it around, bring it up, bring it over. Switch hands, bring it down this side. Turn it around so you can see. There you go. So you notice this window from the factory has never been replaced, and it was put in with double-face tape. You can see the foam tape. Foam double-face tape. So you can see all that foam tape around there, and you can see what the foam tape left on the window. So it was put in with double-sided foam tape, which is a pretty common thing for replacement windows. Now the next problem comes in is the simple fact now we have to replace this window. And if you've ever tried to remove the foam double-face tape, it's extremely difficult to do. You'll try to get a look. This is what my skinny scrapers for, by the way. Try to get the skinny scraper in, and you notice that the foam tape, you can get off most of what I like to call the foam surface of the tape. But you can never, I can't say never, but to get that fine residue off that's left, you're not going to do it. It's just not going to happen. You don't have the time or the will to do it. So here's the problem comes in the fact that if you get new double-face tape to reglaze it, it really doesn't stick very well to this. So you don't get a very good glazing bead between the new insulated glass unit and the sash. And if you don't get a good glazing bead, a good secure adhesive bead there, in the north in the wintertime, cold will escape and it'll come around that window, and the inside perimeter of her window or your customer's window will condense from the cold outside and the heat in the house, and that cold air will work its way through there. So what I propose and what I like to use when I'm replacing a sash like this is RTV 408, which is a product from C.R. Lawrence. This is a neutral cured, non-acidic silicone. And the reason I say that is because insulated units are made with a polybutylene product. So you see this is a triple glazed window. So you have 3 panes of glass, you have 2 insulating bands, and then you have a polybutylene sealant on top of that. Well, if you use an acetoxy cured silicone and you put it in here and it wraps over that edge, the fumes escaping that acid will eat into that polybutylene seal and destroy this unit. Bottom line is it'll shorten the life of this unit to an immeasurable point to where you just don't ever want to use acidic silicone in regards to this. Now, that being said, neutral cured silicone, again, RTV 408, neutral cured product. This you can use all you want. So what I do is when I'm ready to set my new insulated unit in the frame, one, you notice we had a multitude of setting blocks, right? Black rubber spacer blocks. I don't put those in until I put my window in. And then I use those as centering blocks, just like they were in this window. So now what I do is I'm going to get my window prepped. So I'm going to take my scraper tool, and like I said, I'm going to take off all the foam body of that tape. All right, then we get that out of the way. It only takes a few minutes to get the foam body out of the way. Actually, a few seconds, to be honest. So we just want to get that foam body off of that tape base. And if we leave it some tape base, that's okay, because our RTV silicone will seep in and bond to those little nooks and crannies and voids that you can't get off with your knife. So, okay, so you get your frame cleaned down to this point, where you have it down to the base, nothing left. Clean it up real good, wipe it down, clean it up. Now what we're gonna do is cut a bead of silicone. We're gonna run a bead of silicone right around this edge, all the way around, right on top of where our tape used to be. Once we do that, we're gonna take our unit and set our unit back inside the frame. And then, like I said, once it's there, I can move it around on the silicone. It will move. So I'm going to put it, and I'm going to put 2 blocks underneath the bottom of it, because I know that the bottom is going to support most of the weight. So I'm going to make sure I get 2 of those spacer blocks under the bottom. And the other critical place is on the top of the sides. So we're going to get spacer block in there, spacer block in there. All right, and then we get another one down here, and another one down here. So you notice that we have 6 spacer blocks. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it keeps the frame square, so that the frame can't slide around the glass. So now when we get that done, we're ready to put our glazing beads back on. So we have a couple of vendors, Strybuck Industries and Swissco.com, who provide vinyl glazing beads if you need them. The glazing beads go back in, exact opposite of how they came out. So if you notice the glazing bead, it has a little step down notch right there. And that little lip locks into the side of the sash. So this leg goes in behind the glass, and this leg locks it in. So when we go in, you'll see the channel on the sash. That channel right there. Let me point to you right here. You see this channel right here? It runs right in behind our blocks. That channel receives this glazing bead. So we take it, we line it up with that channel. Right, we get in the corner, and all we do is pull it straight down towards the window like that, and you'll feel it lock. You hear it snap into place. We do the same thing over here. We find that channel right there, slide that glazing bead in, right down to the bottom, slide that glazing bead in there, and then all we do is you grab it and squeeze it, and you'll hear it snap right in. Done. And we do the same thing on the bottom and the top. You can just put the glazing beads back in, and within, I don't know, 5 or 10 minutes, you've replaced the sash, you've replaced an insulated glass unit in a double hung window. And more importantly, if you used the split the stop method to measure, it would have worked. We would have been a little short on the height. We would have had to add another block underneath, but at the end of the day, it would have worked just fine. So remember, splitting the stop is always an effective way to measure when you have glazing beads. Again, face of the stop, back side of this stop. 15, 12 and 3/8. Okay, and that's our glass size. So again, replacing an insulated glass unit in a vinyl replacement window. This is Tom Patterson. Thank you.